Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week. What time of the week is that? It is the time of the week where we come onto your radio waves. We dig underneath the dirt that the establishment and the mainstream media is trying to, basically shovel over our eyes. Of course, we won't be going to no ancestral plane. They're trying to, just make us blind. It is a Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. As always, following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University. I got my co-host Lawrence in here with me.
Yo.
Yeah, Luke.
What's up?
I'm sorry.
What's up with that harp-shaped herb, though?
Oh yeah.
The Mad Lib's gonna be here pretty soon. Mm-hmm. He's on his way.
Mm-hmm. And we're actually gonna we'll talk a little bit. We're referencing Black Panther, which
because it was absolutely. Oh my God! It was awesome.
Yep,
it was fantastic.
Been waiting for that movie for like 10 years, and it's like Afrofuturism, and it talks about imperialism and colonization, and man,
it talks about colorism as well, and black and female black female feminism, and it also talks about the aspects of how American black people look at the world compared to a fictionalized country that was never colonized. So I mean, like, there's a lot of meat on them bones, and that movie is so good on so many levels. Yeah. And in my opinion, in the top 3 of best Marvel movies that has come out. In no particular order, but it's in the top 3 of best Marvel movies to come out.
Oh well, it's personally my favorite. But do we want to dig into that now, or we got a couple of stories?
No. We got a couple. Yeah. There's a lot of news to talk about, and there's a lot of stupid. There's been a lot of stupid this last week and in the last couple of days.
I gotta say, like, in the movie, Killmonger, the villain, he has this plan to kind of like take over.
Spoiler alert for those who ain't seen it yet.
But it's very complicated using like the technology of Wakanda. But I guess he could have just used like 13 Russians instead.
He could have used 13 Russians and some really horrible memes that no one's seen on Facebook or Twitter. He could have swung that at this point. I'm surprised that the Democratic Party ain't blaming Wakanda for swinging the election.
Oh yeah, there you go.
like, are you kidding me?
No, that'll be next time when the Republicans lose. It was all Wakanda's fault.
Oh man, dog.
Wakanda.
They're gonna blame Wakanda and Agrabah.
Yep.
They're gonna say Aladdin swung the election. Like, dog. Okay, before we get into the deep stuff. There is some really positive news.
There is.
There are things that should make you laugh and smile in this crazy world. The president, President Cheeto, he actually said that he was going to. Made a notion that we should ban bump stocks in America.
Wow.
He heard the voices of those victims in Florida. When he saw those 17 students in them schools protest in front of the White House, and them 17 kids laid down in front of the White House, that he was moved to do something. Now, is he going to follow through on it? Probably not. But this is the first time that I can think of where legislation is actually being somewhat moved on by by not only the president, but by, you know, in a major way. Because normally, the way that school shootings go, you get the shooting, they analyze the shooter, thoughts and prayers go out, then everybody goes to their side of their camps of, oh, we need gun legislation. No, it's about mental health.
I mean, you basically can put this whole situation on autoplay.
Oh no! And then that's that autoplay. And then right after that are those debates online. You get crickets because no legislation comes from it. And then they say it's not the right time to talk about it. It's not the right time to talk about it. Then another shooting happens.
And you know, I do want to like really point out too. Like, you're right. There's something seemed really different about it this time, and I think it was the way that the students in Florida really like mobilized.
Man.
And you know, I don't think we've seen anything quite like this before, where, you know, we've had these happen, and you know, a lot of communities will treat these things like a natural disaster. And these students in Florida, they weren't having any of that. You know, they're like, no, this is part of an endemic problem, and we know exactly why something like this was allowed to happen, and we're gonna shout it out, and we're gonna organize around it.
Oh yeah, I mean, before we we're gonna dig deeper more into that, and there are a couple more things I want to speak on that. But I did say there were positive news. So positive news that you can take home and go and be happy about for the next couple hours. Black Panther was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fergie singing the national anthem was amazing to watch. If you haven't seen it,
I haven't seen that.
Oh man, watching the reactions, watching the reactions of her singing, is priceless.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And watching the speeches of the teenagers from Florida and how they were calling out Congress and our president.
Yeah, I gotta say
that's positive. It's positive. That stuff that will make you hit your heart.
Yeah, and I actually just so it's Democracy Now has the full speech up, and let me make sure I get this right, because I want to okay, no, that's not the right story, but
it's amazing that one of the most powerful speeches from the students were from a group of teenagers who can't say cuss words in front of their parents, and they're being more adult about this situation than the adults that create the laws that they have to live by. By the NRA funded congressmen and women who literally who literally will say there's nothing that they can do about it and things like that. And these young activists are scheduling rallies. They're calling out congressmen, men and women by their names. They're talking about how much money they've been funded by the NRA. They're taking action, and we have to hold our legislative accountable. The deaths of these kids are on the faults of the legislators that did not do anything about it since Sandy Hook, since the Las Vegas shooting, since the mass shooting that happened in Kalamazoo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's on us as Americans to see what's more valuable. You know, what are we going to value? Are we gonna let the people who are supposed to represent us care more about the donations that they get from a organization that makes their money on death and destruction?
And I just wanted to it was Emma Gonzalez who did that just she brought it home
Sister
with her speech.
Emma. Sister, as Dr. Cornel West would say, Sister Emma.
Sister Emma. Yeah. So
Sister Emma.
look that up.
Yeah, man.
And one of the things that has really struck me about this recent thing is like, this is a movement. They're mobilizing and organizing around these high school students in Florida, and it's becoming something national. Like you mentioned, when they are out in front of the White House, doing civil disobedience. Actually, today I wanted to point this out too. They did a walkout right here in Kalamazoo at a couple of different schools, including Lori Norrick's and
Knights,
Maple Street. Yep,
Maple Street.
And it just goes to show, like, this is happening everywhere.
Oh yeah, man.
And that's something I don't know if we've really seen in the gun control debate so far, because it's like you said, we get into this pattern where everybody debates about it for a little bit until the next mass shooting, and then wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, and then in between the debating, you'll hear congressmen and political hacks say it's not the right time. Their bodies are not even in the ground yet, so we can't talk about this yet. And it's like, when is the best time to talk about this? Okay, so we can't talk about this school shootings. Can we talk about Las Vegas? Mm-hmm. Okay, we can't talk about Las Vegas. Can we talk about Pulse nightclub? We can't talk about Pulse nightclub. Can we talk about Umpqua Community College, or the movie theater mass shooting, or Kalamazoo mass shooting, or the fact that and this is the thing that also I wanted to talk about. Everybody's a legal gun owner until they start flipping out and start shooting people. Mm-hmm. And this 19-year-old kid, this 19-year-old terrorist was captured alive. And this 19-year-old terrorist was treated with more dignity and respect than Tamir Rice, who had a toy gun.
Oh, wait. That's always important to bring up.
This kid is a terrorist by literal Webster definition.
Well, I believe was it his attorney or the court that just basically described him as a disturbed child, and it's like he's a legal adult.
It was a newspaper, and it was also his court attorney that described him as a child. This man, this young 19-year-old man, decided to use an assault weapon to commit acts of violence on the behest of his neo-Nazi white supremacist brothers and sisters who he was training with, and the NRA, because he was in an NRA funded after school program that taught him how to shoot weapons. And the fact that the NRA did not say anything about this mass shooting.
Shh, quiet.
It tells you everything that you need to know about the NRA. It doesn't make sense that this organization, which members is 5% of the American population, has over 50% of the guns in our country, and they are holding us hostage.
All right, hold on a sec. I'm gonna go grab.
Oh yeah,
Mr. McDonald.
I got him.
You got him. All right. So yeah, and going a little further into that. Excuse me. So, that's a really important thing to bring up, because a lot of people. I've even seen people say, it's like, well, why do you have to keep bringing up race? It's like, that's the disparity that exists in this country. If you're on the corner selling loose cigarettes, the police will choke you out until you die. If you are a mass shooter, a disturbed 19-year-old child, you'll get... I believe he got tackled to the ground, but I don't even know if they even roughed him up that much. And again, this was a really disturbed individual, and there, what these teenagers were saying, who are the victims, and this is something I really wanted to bring up, because it's the power of being able to speak your personal truth, speak testament. So there's a good example. Tommy Lauren, did her typical, why do I always have to blame guns thing? And one of the victims actually responded to her, and I believe they were either while or right after they had gotten done hiding in a closet inside the school.
Yeah.
And
I saw that.
The power of it is, it's not just people on the internet being recognized and doing these talking points. It's people who have actually lived through this, and they can call out and gut this BS in a way that I think an average person who's on this issue on one place or another probably cannot.
I've said this before on this show, and I'm gonna say it again. And I really, really hope that this doesn't happen. America has made a decision on when it comes to guns in this country. After children were shot at Sandy Hook, America decided that's okay. After congressmen and women were shot and they still did not there still wasn't any gun legislation, it was okay. After this mass shooting, the only way that we're gonna get real gun reform in this country, which 92% of the country wants, the only way we will get that in this country is either one of two ways. Either someone's gonna have to get shot at the next State of the Union, or at the next Million Man March, every black and brown person that marches onto Washington needs to be carrying a long rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the only two ways in America. America will actually look at and want to have gun reform. Look at comprehensive gun reform in this country.
Yeah, I mean that's true. Speaking of Black Panther, some of the template for a lot of modern gun control legislation actually came out of California when the Black Panthers decided to engage in armed self-defense.
Reagan didn't like that.
Yeah,
he was sort of not. Ronald Reagan wasn't a huge fan of that idea, which is why California has a lot of the gun control regulations they have now. So
when armed black men and women walk into Congress, the Congress of California, saying, yes, we have rights too. We are humans. We are Americans as well, and we have rights. Well, practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where we can totally have gun control and regulation on firearms in the United States while still allowing the Second Amendment to exist and be, still a part of American culture. It's not impossible to do at all. But special interest groups like the NRA, backed by the military-industrial complex and the gun lobby, you make more money when your position is absolutist.
And, I'd like to add to that, too, and especially in the wake of this most recent one, I've seen a lot of pushback from, the pro-gun left, which is something's kind of become a bit more visible since Trump got in the office. I'm talking about, like, Redneck Revolt, Socialist Rifle Association, that kind of thing. And, it's not an either-or thing. Pointing out that a lot of existing American gun control legislation is based... has that kind of racist past in history, doesn't mean we shouldn't put in some common sense, evidence-based measures that would cut down on gun violence here in America. I think the Australia example gets brought up pretty often.
The Australia example is the example that is the most extreme, that proves both points that are brought to the table. One point is the point that all three of us are on, that we all agree on, is no, gun bans do eliminate gun violence. It's
scientifically proven.
Sort of. It's like gun bans don't work. Nobody tell Australia.
Wait.
Nobody tell Australia that.
Wait. What about Japan? What about the violent video games? What about the movies?
The point that the opposite point that Australia also proves is, well, you just want to ban guns to get rid of the gun violence, which is the hyperbole. So it's a little bit of a hyperbole on both sides. The Japan example is way better because you can own a gun. You have to take required training courses. You have to prove that you are both mentally fit and physically capable of wielding the weapon. You have to prove accuracy with the weapon. You have to prove that you can store it and its ammunition safely and separately. You have to prove that you need a legitimate reason to have one. Like you actually have to prove that you need one. And after that, you still have to wait 5 to 7 months before you get it.
I wouldn't even. As someone who I agree, I actually agree with the Japan way of looking at gun policy, but I would even negotiate as far right as say, can we have a comprehensive gun legislation that's just like trying to buy a car? You know what I'm saying? I'm like. Can we have those same policies with something that me and Luke talked about the other day? The only difference is, okay, you want to own a gun, you can. You want to own more than 3 guns, you're gonna have to pay taxes on it. You're gonna have to pay taxes on that. And how many bullets are you trying to buy? Oh, you're gonna have to pay taxes on that too.
There's
trying to buy 500
nothing
bullets?
in the second. It's my ultimate point that I always end up coming to whenever I discuss this is the Second Amendment doesn't state anything about regulating ammunition.
Oh, that's true.
It's like you can have a gun, you can carry your firearm around all you want. The government can totally regulate how much ammunition you get to have.
Oh man,
for that weapon. At any one time.
Now you're sounding like Chris Rock. now you're sounding like Chris Rock.
Make guns cheap. Make bullets expensive.
No.
You unloaded a whole clip into him? What did he do? Oh my God!
Even if you get if every bullet costs $5,000, there would be no more innocent bystanders. Even if you get shot by a bullet, that person, you ain't gotta go to the hospital. That person will take that bullet back.
Okay, I am gonna say I'm a little like. I think I've kind of said on the show like I'm probably the most not even like being for guns, but like I'm probably the most libertarian up here about gun stuff, but I definitely do agree there needs to be like some common sense legislation about, well, you're talking about like I'm not necessarily for like monetizing it anyway, but getting like more safety protocols and especially more intervention. You notice like somebody making these psychotic comments. Or I shouldn't say psychotic, making comments on the internet like about how they want to be a professional school shooter. That should be grounds to take away. You don't deserve that right anymore.
Well, I was just joking, bro. Yeah, we're taking it seriously. Yeah. You might be joking. The rest of us think you're a danger.
No, here's the thing. You live in a country where 8 out of 9 people own a gun. So when you say, I want to be a professional school shooter, okay, you might be joking. How many other people in this country do you think is...
So how many people might not take you at your jest and might actually take you seriously? And how many people might go, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'm going to do that. Well, something my dad... I love my dad. My dad's great. I
have a dad.
He posted. He doesn't comment on social media very often, so when he does, I tend to pay real close attention to what he says. He posted 2 potential interpretations of the Second Amendment because that's the ultimate sticking point with the NRA. You can't infringe upon our Second Amendment rights. And hold on, I gotta.
While he's pulling that up, real deep dive, keep in mind, Second Amendment itself, I think a lot of people have
I was pulling up the text to the Second Amendment, actually.
All right.
So the Second Amendment states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what it says. It assumes that if you are going to bear arms in a way that is militarily feasible, you are part of a well-regulated militia. It was also, like, the Second Amendment, we have to keep in mind, was also drafted in a time when the thing called the American frontier existed. The American frontier does no longer exists. It's not a thing. There are no hostile nations at our borders.
And I think it's also important to point out, and there's a lot of scholarship that backs this up too, is that something that heavily influenced the developing of the Second Amendment was basically as a way to control the slave population. So
I mean, it was also a part. Those well-organized militias a lot of times were slave patrols.
Yeah,
they were slave patrols, and they were using muskets.
Yeah. So the amendment states the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. IMO, this means that everyone has a right to have a muzzle loader in their house and may carry it if they so wish. In no way is it possible that automatic weapons were considered by the framers of the Constitution, as it was their intent that the document be revisited every half century or so, then a literal interpretation makes sense. The other way of looking at this would be to use the rest of the amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. You want assault weapons? Fine. Join a state militia and regulate them. Background checks, psychological profiles, etc. In other words, if you want a gun, everyone has the right to a muzzle loader. If you want something more modern, you have to join a state militia and be tracked and tagged according to the law. And honestly, that doesn't seem completely unreasonable to me.
No.
Neither of those things seem completely unreasonable to me, because it just sort of makes sense to me that if you're going to join a state militia, which is an organization that is heavily armed within the United States borders,
like
which, if taken to a radical extreme enough, could be a potential domestic threat, well then, yeah, your name should be on a list.
I mean, and this is a thing that goes back to something that Trump did earlier this week, because you'll hear people who are pro Second Amendment say it's not about the guns, man. It's about mental health, and it's not about the guns, because guns don't kill people. People kill people. It's a mental health issue. Trump earlier this year, when one of his first regulations that he did as president,
February 2017,
took away the clause that President Obama put in place that people who are mentally ill can buy a gun. When I say mentally ill, we're not talking about just people who are on drugs. They were talking about people who are not allowed to take money out of the bank for them to pay their own bills, for them to do their own taxes. Those kind of people in America are now allowed to buy weapons. We also not just arm them, people who are on the terrorist watch list are also now allowed to own guns in America. People who we know and we have been watching, because they have said things that's a threat to other Americans, to the lives of other Americans, can buy weaponry in this country.
And I'd like to add to that too, and I'm glad the mental illness thing is being discussed a lot in this particular case, and some really important points that have been brought up are that it's something very kind of lazy that the right wing likes to point to, when in fact most mentally ill people are less likely to engage in that kind of violence than people without any of those kind of diagnoses. Something that is far more indicative of the potential to be a shooter is, if you are male, if you are white, and here's the big one, if you have a history of engaging in domestic violence. And I think beyond, what dialogues about mental health really miss the forest through the trees. And it's that America, we live in this culture and society of violence.
Yep.
And that's something that
it's something that does get brought up, because they're whenever it comes about, one of the scapegoats, and I say this straight up because they just jump to it without actually unpackaging what is causing it. We just blame movies, TV, video games, whatever violent artistic medium is the flavor du jour of the day.
No, man. They blame hip hop.
Blame the music, blame the TV, blame music, blame TV, blame music or movies, blame video games, blame whatever, and just blame without recognizing that the media that we consume is reflective of the culture we have. So if we live in a violent culture that protects violent people and protects their quote-unquote right to bear arms, even though they have been shown to be a clear and present danger to other people, especially if they have a history with it, then why on earth are we continuing to feed that cycle of violence rather than do something to stem it? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you can go ahead and point at video games, music, movies, and television as, indicative of the thing that breeds the violence within our culture, but at the same time, they are not the causes of it.
And to add to that, studies, the Young Turks did a piece about this when it comes to the mental health part of it. They quoted multiple studies that has happened over the last couple of years, and America has just as much mental health problems as any other country, as just as much as every other industrial nation in the world. When it comes to our mental health, we are exactly the same as every other country. So, if it's in other countries like France, Germany, Denmark, Japan, China, Australia, Canada, they play video games, they listen to hip hop, they go to the movies just as much, and more than we do. Studies have shown that there's multiple films, especially black films, that do better overseas in China, because China has a bigger market, and it does better over there than it will in America. So it's not so much the media or video games or whatever they want to blame. It's the weapons that they have access to. Think about this. Columbine. Columbine was done by two people, right? And they had handguns and I think shotguns or semi-automatic rifles, right? Mm-hmm. That was done by two people, and that was one of the largest mass shootings in America's history. The original Valentine's Day massacre was seven people. This one 19-year-old did that with an automatic weapon, and he did that when it was just him by himself at a school. Yep. Can you imagine if it was two kids at a school with an AR-15s? I think or something crazy like that. Like it's going until Wayne LaPierre's kids actually get shot by a gun, until the actual head of the NRA and stuff like that happens. And I don't even think that happened, because there were stories that I've heard of a female gun activist who was shot by her 5-year-old toddler, and she was still a massive gun activist. She got Donkey of the Day by the Breakfast Club. It was sad and hilarious.
I mean, more toddlers kill people with accidental gunfire than some other death statistic.
No. A toddler is shot in America once every 5 days. That was a statistic that came out in 2015.
It's all about our mixed up priorities. You know, more people are killed in America by furniture than terrorists, or Islamic terrorists, I should say.
The most dangerous place for you in your life is your bathroom.
Yeah. All right. We're a little over. Let's go to a break. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
I'm just gonna let this one ride. You know what I mean?
It may not be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in their Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
I'm just gonna let this one ride.
Okay, so let's actually continue on this topic for a little bit, because there were a couple other things I wanted to topic. The whole one, the whole crisis actor thing. The idea that some of these kids are like, these kids can't be Democratic plants because they're prescribing specific policy. They're effective at social media.
Trump's son saying that because one of the kids' fathers is a former FBI agent, that you can't listen to what he was saying on the news.
The FBI is trying to control the narrative because this kid's dad is a retired FBI agent.
Oh my God!
It's
the comments I'm sorry, Republicans who are listening to this. I apologize for what I'm about to say.
Sorry,
but not all Republicans are racist, and not all Republicans are deplorables. But majority of deplorables and racists are Republican. If you look at the comments that Fox News was putting out there, the narrative that right-wing people were saying about these gun victim kids, saying that they were plants, that they're getting paid by George Soros, all this garbage.
My favorite,
oh my God.
My favorite Twitter quip about it actually so far has been politicians who have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from the NRA are accusing these kids of being paid by George Soros. So
he still owes me a ton of protest money. By the way.
Dear George Soros, I've been on the internet front lines, man. Where's my paycheck?
Where's my check?
Where's my paycheck, bro?
Hey.
But at the same time, literally anything that is being levied against these kids in order to silence them, in order to delegitimize in order to attempt to delegitimize their points, in an attempt to minimize their trauma at all from the right. 100%. Like, if you guys think that it is bad to politicize the trauma of victims, but then when victims decide to act on that trauma and come out to make sure that that doesn't happen to other people, which is an inherently political issue, it's their choice to do this. But you say it's bad.
Well, you know what? I kind of took from it.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't deal with the idea that these kids who have gone through this are somehow paid political trolls from the left, or part of the anti-gun lobby planted there. It's like, no, they have video of them inside the school while the shooting was going on. They were there. They're not actors. Anything that is being levied against these kids is 100% garbage. It is a smear job. It's slimy. It's gross. And if you agree with these people, I need you to take a hard look at yourself and actually look at yourself you need to actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I this kind of person? Am I the kind of person who agrees with smearing trauma victims?
Let me just, I'm going to hop it off to Lawrence, but let me just make one quick point. And this kind of response to the victims of this high school shooting, I think it's very telling to me, because they cannot rely on all of their old, tired talking points like they usually do. They usually trot out when a tragedy like this occurs. They're going for something more extreme. They're trying to delegitimize these people who are speaking out against it in a way that says to me that they view these kids as dangerous because they are effective, and they're pushing this narrative a lot more effectively than it has in more recent.
I mean, they're also doing it because they don't have an argument. There's not an argument. This isn't a debate. Gun control is not a debate. We need it.
Silencing. I mean, let's keep. I'm gonna keep it real for a second. The silencing of the powerful in this country to those that are victims is, being a minority in America. It's being black in America. It's the same old trick that they use against victims all the time. How many times have we heard that? Oh well, these stories are fake. These stories are fake. They're playing identity politics. Or how many times have you heard? You're blaming the victim for being victims. This is the same type of playbook that they use against unarmed black people when they're shot. It's the same type of playbook when they use against women who are raped. It's the same type of playbook when they want to justify violence against the LGBT community. It's the same playbook played by those that are in power or those that have a bigger microphone. We've seen it. And the fact that it's happening to teenagers, it's happening to teenagers who have died, in many ways, that's just as American as anything else. I hate to say it, but it is. I don't want to be a pessimist about it, but the fact that we in America, we do not take the time to acknowledge our failings and we just want to move on and act like it doesn't happen, shows that we truly do not care about the situation. We just want to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
For example, in Europe and in Germany, they teach about the Holocaust. They talk about the Holocaust and everything and all the atrocities of it. And they talk about what the Nazis did, so they don't repeat it. When's the last time America actually cared enough in its history to not repeat the failings of their past. They're still trying to take away voting rights from black people. They're still trying to take away women's rights of choice. America in its history and its DNA has never cared about those that are victims. They tell you, here's some bootstraps, and I hope you can duck. Yeah. That's America's formula in its DNA. But the thing that makes it that as Dr. Cornel West would say, the fight back. And this is what makes me happy about it, was listening to that girl's speech, listening to those kids become activists, and calling out their politicians and representatives and holding them accountable. Because that's what we have to do if we're going to actually get significant change.
That's
and
right.
substantial change. And that's that fight back that we all have to do. We can't fall asleep at the wheel.
I do just kind of want to throw in there, every single person trying to smear these kids for what they've gone through and what they're trying to do with it, you're a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Dinesh D'Souza, please come to Kalamazoo. I would like to have words with you.
And by the way, I've been seeing
Tommy Lauren, Ben Shapiro, like
Ben Shapiro's is probably one of my favorite ones, because his argument is, well, teenagers' brains, their emotional centers are overdeveloped and their logical centers are underdeveloped, and their brain development just isn't in the place where it needs to be in order to make logical assertions about policy. No, Ben Shapiro, you're a dumbass. You're using pseudoscience to back up your garbage argument.
This is
brain development, my butthole.
No. This is the same intellectual Republican genius that's such a special snowflake that he was triggered because of the sales that Black Panther was doing.
Dear Ben Shapiro.
Are you kidding me?
Dear Ben Shapiro.
Actually, that's a good segue, but
eat 1,000 buttholes. Black Panther is amazing.
So, why don't we spend like about 10-15 minutes talking about that?
Oh man.
Do you mean spend 10-15 minutes letting Lawrence talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay, no. I'm not gonna say any spoilers, but I'm like I said earlier on the program, it's in my top 3 of favorite Marvel movies of all time in no particular order. Now, yes, what I say is the number 1 best Marvel movie, but that they've ever created. I will make that argument because for reasons of me growing up with Black Panther all my life. But I have minor gripes with the movie. Because I have minor gripes with a lot of Marvel movies. Between Act 2 and Act 3, which is after the big plot twist and the major plot twist, they like to rush into the third set piece because Marvel has this tendency of, well, you know all this cool stuff that we just showed you? That's nothing. Wait till we get to this new stuff. And it's like, wait, I want to see the world develop more. I want to see more of this character development. And they do it a lot. Like they did it in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 really well. They did it in Ant-Man really well. My 2 favorite movies outside of Black Panther is still Civil War and Winter Soldier. But Black Panther, dog, is... It hits so many notes well.
I feel like honestly,
amazing.
I really feel like we can't talk about this movie without issuing the spoiler warning.
We might end up spoiling it.
Spoiler alert for everyone.
Here's your spoiler warning. If you don't want Black Panther spoilers because you haven't gotten out and seen it yet, how dare you?
Yeah.
It broke so many records, man.
Yeah.
It broke so many records.
If you've not seen Black Panther yet, please try and get out and see it. If you have seen Black Panther and you have a friend who has not seen it, drag their butt out to a movie theater and pay for their ticket.
Oh, man, yeah.
And I did want to say, so, like, this is a political talk show, and this is definitely, I say, the most politically charged movie Marvel's ever done.
Oh my goodness!
Oh man! You know the shade that was thrown when at the end. Okay, Marvel has 2 end credit scenes. Everyone knows this. the first end credit scene, the shade that King T'Challa was throwing.
Oh my goodness.
His political.
It's amazing how much shade. It is amazing how much shade you can throw in a glance.
Oh man. So
like the amount of shade that was in that just one eye motion could have qualified for a solar eclipse.
Oh man.
oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
Oh my
It
God.
truly was.
But I think and I was talking to Lawrence about this before the show, and it's gotten mostly a lot of praise from there have been some like hard left critiques, and a lot of that has to do with like the relationship of the movie with the CIA, and there are two characters who ostensibly come out of that. One is the white guy, and there's some problems, and I honestly
Mr. Ross.
If there is like
Ross.
one political issue I
Bilbo
have in the
Baggins.
movie, it's
Bilbo
like
Baggins.
the one white accomplice in the movie is a CIA agent. Like, oh man. Granted, it's tied in and it's addressed inside the world of the film, but I'm sorry, Lawrence. Yeah.
I mean, come on, dog. You're dealing with the king of a nation. Like you're dealing with the king of a nation and his Secret Service agents. Like you're not gonna have. It's like this. As much as I love Spider-Man, Peter Parker is not going to be in a social encounter with T'Challa in any way, shape, or form unless he is taking pictures. That's the only way that's going down.
By the way, I think that movie has the best possible response to whitesplaining I've ever seen.
Well, actually,
Oh my God! No. If he touches you again, I'm going to throw him through the table. I was like, Michonne, stop it, stop it, Michonne. Why?
So I wanted to bring up, there's kind of a distinction between, because some people have criticized. There's actually, I'm not gonna read it verbatim. But Ajamu Baraka, who's pretty solid dude, he was highly critical of kind of the alignment of T'Challa versus Killmonger, and this idea of like Killmonger is he felt like it depicts kind of like black revolutionary intent and depicts that as the villain, whereas Wakanda and the Black Panther are kind of outside of that and are like working against that kind of revolutionary solidarity. I think it's a little bit more complex than that, but I'll let you speak to that, Lawrence.
I mean, for those, again, spoiler alert. There's two aspects of this. This is it was Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ryan Coogler basically saying, "Hey Fox, you know how in the X-Men universe, Malcolm and Martin Luther King are Professor Xavier and Magneto. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be done, right? That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that it goes back to the evolution of T'Challa's character and Killmonger's character. One was raised in America, and his only social circle was his father, who he saw die in front of him, who he found dead in front of him. He was raised in America during the 90s. So during 92, right around that time, the Rodney King beating happened, and he's watching those riots happen when he's 10 years old. He's growing up in the projects of Oakland. He grows up to go into the CIA, or grows up and joins the military to get out of poverty. And from there, he knows where he's from because he's found his dad's books. He knows that he's from a country that could help his situation and help people who look like him but are not doing so. So he's trained to be a person who deals in regime change by the colonists of a country that does nothing but regime change.
Which, by the way, I got to bring up, it's pretty incredible for that to be not only spoken about openly, but a main plot point in a mainstream American Hollywood film. But
So since his idea of change, progressive change, is we're gonna do to those that hurt our people the same thing that was done to us, it's ironic and sad, because if the system that he was put into nurtured his talent and did not have a destructive talent, then he wouldn't have been put in that situation. But that goes to the system of America. That also goes back to that system that the Wakandans has of isolation. Because if they would have treated his father and his son with respect and brought them back, then then Killmonger wouldn't be the problem that he was. On top of that, that goes to T'Challa's evolution. Because T'Challa initially was going to become a king just like his dad, until he talked to his ex-girlfriend, who's a spy dealing with people around the world, seeing how African Americans are treated around the world and other things of that nature, and then also learning about Killmonger, who's his cousin. So that whole evolution is saying, no, our isolationist ways has put our people behind. And it goes back to an even deeper point, where if you look at the Talented 10 with W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, that the top 10% of Black America, or not just Black America, but just Black people in general, it's their responsibility to bring the other 90% up, either by helping them to become stable, by either helping them become financially educated, by either helping them with housing or anything. It is their responsibility. When they are not doing that, but you have someone who's in that bottom now rising to the top, and now he may have power to do so, where is he going to get his influence from? Is it going to be from those 10, from that Talented 10, or is it from these other sources?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And that goes in that dichotomy, and watching that dichotomy play out is so, that's one part of it that I find that was amazing. The other part of it, you know what I mean, the whole black feminism with a black woman who's loyal to the nation and has to be loyal to the nation no matter what, and a black woman who is loyal to the nation, but she wants to do the right thing because of the person that she's in love with, and that whole dichotomy playing out. Seeing colorism when it comes to women and the way that they wear their hair, seeing that being seeing how that it's not harped on, but it's in the movie. Seeing Siri, his little sister, and how she represents Wakanda, and from her perspective, being a younger sister when it comes to the technology and their way of life. Seeing how her mother and Forrest Whitaker embraces the culture of Wakanda. The movie, and I've said this before, the movie reminds me a lot of like basically Ryan Coogler said, since I have Disney's money, we're gonna make Black James Bond, Black Star Wars, Black Godfather, and Black Lord of the Rings all at one time.
Yeah. Black Panther, 100%.
That's what it is.
100%.
Yeah.
The filmography of Black Panther is easily the best and most world building Marvel has ever done in a movie. Like I love me Guardians of the Galaxy. I love me some Thor. Like, but those aren't worlds. Those are set pieces. Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't have a world. Their world is the universe. So anywhere you go is just set piece. Asgard is a good place, but
Ragnarok was dope.
But it's like like Asgard as a place is a good set piece, but it itself is not a world, because it's not You're not dealing with the internal political struggles. You're not dealing with the situations and the culture of Asgard, because the main character is the son of Odin and pretty much just goes off and does whatever he wants whenever he wants because, hey, I'm Thor. The world building that was required to make Wakanda feel like a real place. And it felt like a real place. Like, I want that place to be real.
It was based off of, I mean, again, for a lot of people who do not know, Black Panther was based off of a couple different things. The Zande tribe in Africa. The Zande tribe in Africa was a black tribe that was not colonized by Europeans. That's an actual true story. The Amazon women, the Dora Milaje, the warrior women, the General Army. Those are actual fighting force women that were a part of African armies, and that's a real thing. So there's a lot of real world black culture, African culture that's in this movie.
It's 100%. It's 100% Afrofuturism, and I was
so
here
good.
for it because I loved it. I loved it 100%.
No, this is the only thing that okay. So minor gripes is that there's some CGI stuff that happens in the third act. So I'm just like, and I was like, all right, I can forgive that because the shots that they were doing during it, I was like, oh my god, it was absolutely amazing. And then the council scene, I wanted the council scene and the scene where T'Challa's best friend finds out that he didn't complete the mission. I wanted to see those two scenes stretch out more. I wanted to see those two scenes in particular stretch out for 3 to 5 more minutes. And I wanted to see Michonne, I keep forgetting her name. I call she's Michonne. Yeah. I wanted to see Michonne interact with the dude from Get Out. And I wanted to see their interactions more because that dynamic in that story,
the fact that that dynamic was never really explored was a little disappointing.
No. It was explored in the sense that when she first addressed him and they first addressed each other, that was like, okay, they're a thing, they're a couple, but the deterioration from him being on T'Challa's side to him fully fledged being on Killmonger's side, and then I'm like, all right.
Well, but supposedly there is a 6-hour cut of the film somewhere.
That's what I'm saying. For at least the cut that made the screen. Yeah. Like, yes, the relationship is mentioned. You can kind of see the deterioration
during that war council
in their kind of attitudes toward each other, their unspoken attitudes and their body language and the acting.
Well, I think he's like more sympathetic toward, like the main rift is like he's more sympathetic towards Killmonger's point of view because he's at, like, his family has actually been personally affected by Claw, who's probably like the most symbolic of like white colonialism in the movie.
I mean Ulysses S. Claw, his whole these are two other things. Killmonger in the comic book is he's like Venom. He's a one-note character that was created during the 90s, and he wasn't one of my favorite. He's not one of my favorite supervillains, and I am so happy that they redid his backstory. They gave him depth, in my opinion. Besides Loki and Kingpin, Killmonger has to... Loki, Kingpin, and Killgrave. Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger has to be one of the best villains.
2 out of 2 Human Torches have been redeemed by the MCU.
So on that note, and I know it's getting close, I at least like get a quick reaction after the break from you, Lawrence, to the next topic, which is the talk about Mueller and Russian trolls.
Oh man! Oh god!
All right.
Okay. No. I do want to know one thing.
Yeah.
I have my reaction of it. As this is the other thing that I want to say. The people, the special snowflakes that have to pretend that they were getting beat up at Black Panther Panther screenings. You are garbage human beings, and the movie still broke records. Thank you for trying. Good luck next time.
Please don't play again.
Yeah, please do not play again. Do not insert coins here. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Okay, just stop it.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
WIDR is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations, on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. So we want to talk a little bit about the newest revelation out of the Mueller investigation. Oh, man. And supposedly, we're not even really going to talk too much about Mueller's indictment. I mean, I do have some problems with the indictment itself, but mostly we're going to talk about the media reaction to it.
The overstated media reaction?
The overstated media reaction to it. I mean, it follows a pretty consistent pattern. This thing comes out about Russiagate that is not either like a huge deal or is kind of tangential to what could actually be indictable towards the administration. It gets blown up on the mainstream media, and then it just kind of disappears after it spends a few days in the news cycle. This one struck me as particularly ridiculous because it was talking about essentially like this Russian, well, we call it a troll farm, but it's like an internet advertising agency, and it specifically indicted 13 employees of this company for interfering or influencing the 2016 presidential election. So before I dig deeper into this, just like hot takes from you guys about this stuff.
Meme magic was never real.
Yeah.
The fact that an MSNBC host pointed out to Hillary Clinton's campaign chair or campaign manager, and said, "How is it that these Russian bots targeted Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other purple states, but your campaign never did?"
Wrecked.
And so we're okay. The parts that make sense in the indictment. Some of these people stole American identities. Mm-hmm. That's legit. That's legit. You can go after that.
The indictments of here are 13 people who committed actual crimes against Americans. Okay, yeah, arrest them.
Yeah,
punish them. They committed a crime.
Yeah. They stole people's identities, and they stole people's bank accounts.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's the important thing to note is like on a scale of like criminal malfeasance, this was closer to like, taking the mileage down in your car if you're a used car salesman than sabotaging a sovereign country's democracy.
Yeah, no. Here's the thing. I'm not gonna do what a lot of political pundits do and say, well, America. So we're gonna get this out of the way. America does interfere with other people's elections. Joe Biden has basically admitted to that on national TV. So has other people. That has nothing to do with the investigation. I just wanted to get that out the way because I know that's something that we're going to bring up. This is the point that I want to say. These memes that were put online that were pro Hillary and also pro Trump, and they were also did some stuff where they helped, quote unquote, air quote, Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and whatever. These memes and advertisements that was on Twitter and Facebook were not seen by the majority of American people.
Yeah, literally never saw a single one.
They spent $5,000, $5,000 to $50,000 on memes that the majority of American people never seen. And if you're telling me that that's a bigger influence than the $1 billion that the DNC spent, or the $6.5 billion of free advertisement that the mainstream media gave to one candidate over another, then you are truly lost your mind.
Or about that interstate cross-check system. Yeah, those memes way better at influencing, so much better at influencing elections than that cross-check system that totally disenfranchised 450,000 Michigan voters.
Well, it's really interesting we bring that up.
God.
And it's something like Jill Stein was recently interviewed. And by the way, look this up. All the descriptions are Jill Stein goes nuts or loses it, when really she's like calmly making a lot of really good and well-researched points. But she brings up the thing about the mainstream media giving Trump all that free advertising. And this was very telling. The correspondent's response wasn't, no, we didn't influence the election. It was, well, yes, but we're not Russian. And you know, that and you know, it's funny, but it really struck at the core of me, like why Russiagate bothers me so much. And it's that it's the looking glass. I'm looking glass with it. It's like, are you a nationalist or are you an internationalist? Because depending on where you're coming from, you're going to view this whole Russiagate situation in two different ways.
No. Take that to its logical conclusion and put that in any other situation. Mm-hmm. It's okay that I rob you and take your wallet because I'm American.
Yeah.
It's okay that I poison your food because I'm American. Yeah. Now, if the Russians poison your food, that might be a problem. Mm-hmm. What? I still got poisoned and robbed. How does that make any sense?
Oh, it's because they're Russian.
And, like, yeah, we've got one. So, like, yeah, let's compare, like, say, cross-check to, you know, these memes. So you have one thing that was basically small in scale and unquantifiable, and one thing, cross-check, which was large in scale and it's quantifiable. I could give you a number: 490,000. That's how many voters were disenfranchised in Michigan because of that cross-check system. But it was developed by an American named Chris Kobach. However, the Russian meme thing, it's small, it is unquantifiable. There will be no way to ever know how many people were or were not influenced in whichever way by these memes, but because it was done by a foreign government, most people, but definitely the mainstream media, they are going to be angrier and broadcast that way more.
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, what really convinced me to vote against Hillary Clinton was the meme where she was playing chess against the devil.
Well, Hillary Clinton is a Satan, not Satan, just a Satan.
Satan.
Yeah.
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 No, here's the thing. You had broken English on these memes. You had the fact that they are saying that these memes and these ads helped Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and they hurt Hillary Clinton's chances against Donald Trump. One goes to the arrogance of the mainstream media and to the point where, one, nobody actually, a lot of those people who are saying this have not read the actual investigation when Mueller says there is no clear evidence that that influenced the vote of the electorate.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
That's in the dossier that Mueller put out. That's the one point. Second point is, when they brought Jill Stein on MSNBC and later in that interview, and the host, I forgot the lady's name, asked Jill Stein, was your presence in the election help sway the vote? And there's actual polling data that shows two different things. A, 60% of the people that voted for Jill Stein, if she was not in the race, would not have voted. B, that only 30% of only 30% of the people who the 30% of the people that voted for Jill Stein would have voted for Hillary Clinton if she wasn't in the race. C, 9% of registered Democrats voted for Trump.
Yep.
Like, come on, son. Jill Stein only had 2% of the national vote. Now, I'm not the smartest grade of weed in the dispensary, I'm not the highest grade of weed in the dispensary.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm not the highest grade of weed in the dispensary, but what is 0.3% of 2?
Yeah, and when we talk about like how media has this kind of corporate bias, it's not always so much like what they tell, is like what they don't tell. So like, several months ago, it was this story going around like 7% of Bernie supporters from the primary to the general switched to Trump. And it's like they're leaving out the fact that that's pretty common for most elections. And also, like you just said, a higher percentage of people, of Democrats in the general, flipped against Hillary.
I mean, and using that statistic, like I hate the way that statistic is used, because they use it as a bludgeon against progressives and populist left policy to delegitimize those positions by saying, well, they all voted for a terrible person. And I'm just like, but that means they would have voted for Bernie Sanders if you had picked Bernie Sanders. I don't understand.
Even going back to this thing with the memes, you can see that in practice here. So the mainstream media will mention, the Russians were boosting Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Well, they were also boosting Joy Reid, who, if you don't know who Joy Reid is, she is a pundit who is very much a part of the Democratic establishment, very pro-Hillary. And her posts were boosted by the same Russian company that was boosting the Jill Stein, the Bernie Sanders, and the Trump stuff.
The thing that okay, so just for people to be clear, we're not against. None of us here are against the Mueller investigation. We want Trump. We've talked about on this show multiple times that there are things that if Trump's going to go down for, we've already talked about it. It's the money. It's the money. It's the money laundering. When Mueller, multiple aides that were a part of Trump's administration has already flipped, and they're not flipping on Trump because they don't have anything. They took plea bargains because they have something. And if Trump does get indicted and get impeached, then that's going to happen. That's fine, and that's good. If he's doing corrupt dealings, which we know he's doing. Within that same token, you cannot say that these trolls, that what the Russians did is just as bad as Pearl Harbor.
Oh my God.
Like you can't, when you hear that kind of garbage coming from the left, coming from progressives,
coming from elected Congress people.
That's when it's like, okay, all right, now you tripping. You should go home, sit down, be humble.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like, I know some people will criticize and be like, well, it's a little hyperbolic to say like this could lead to like World War III, but I will say this much. I think it's absolutely insane to puff your chest like that at the world's second largest nuclear superpower. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. It's not that. When I just want to add to that point because I've heard that narrative being put out there that this is just as bad as Pearl Harbor and blah 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 blah. People never say the next logical thing, which is, how did Americans respond to Pearl Harbor? We got into a world war. That's not something that is not. This is not a poor Russia thing. Vladimir Putin is a horrible dictator, and he's a xenophobic miscreant, and who likes to take his shirt off and act like he's a real bully when he's a scared little boy. That's not the problem. The problem is that we are in many ways trying to criminalize people for things that we do, but we're doing it in a way that if not course corrected, could lead to devastating consequences that will have repercussions for years to come. And that's what none of us want.
Right. And like, we talk a lot in this story about how a lot of the Russiagate stuff in the media is used to suppress outlets on the left. And I look at like a lot of these, so they bring up these Facebook events as examples of Russian influencer interference. And if you actually look into it, the ones that these groups created had very small turnouts, like 8 to 12 to 15 people. They did boost a lot of much bigger events, but those are being put in the same net. So like, what happens if like someday you're trying to organize a big like anti-war rally and maybe like, you know, a foreign entity ends up boosting it? Are you going to be accused of being a Russian agent or colluding with Russia? Like, I saw this interview on CNN that just threw me through a loop, because they went to this woman's house and she was a Trump supporter, and Celia Lawrence, and they were hounding this woman, basically repeating over and over again, do you realize that you went to an event organized by these Russian trolls? And I sympathize with this woman, because she was just like, I went there because I supported my candidate, and other people there were going to support him, and that's why I went. And it was just insane that they're basically trying to tell this woman, it's like, you got duped by Russians. It's like, no, I'm a Trump supporter, and I went to a Trump event. Like,
I'm sorry. It's one of those things where even political foreign agents in America have the right to free speech, and they have the right to organize these events, and they have the right to show up to them, and they have the right to hold them, and people are allowed to show their support at these events that were organized by foreign agents. I'm sorry. It's not that big of a freaking deal.
And you know,
it's really not
the most tenuous leap too in the Mueller indictment, because he does bring up actual crimes. Let's get, you know, get that out of the way right now. But the connection between this company and the Russian government, it says like they've taken some contracts or whatever from the Russian government, but there's nothing in there specific about saying that this corporation was taking marching orders from the Kremlin to disrupt the election. And even in the indictment, they use a lot of weird language about how like they went to America to gather intelligence. And let's be clear, the boosting and the operations they did, what was their incentive? Was it to destabilize the election, or was it to make money because people hired them to boost certain content?
Yeah. It's really wonky. Like, and in terms of the indictments being put out, like, the indictments were put out, and, you know, our tweeter-in-chief can't keep his thumbs off his phone for, you know, more than 10 minutes, which is astounding, because he managed to do just that at his listening today, but whatever. Like, he tweeted out about, I just watched this bit, he tweeted out about everything Russia, and how there's no collusion, which as of right now, there is no proof that Donald Trump ever colluded with Russia. It's true. It's a fact, and the fact that the mainstream media doesn't like that fact means they're all hot and bothered over it. Meanwhile, and I know it's getting a little off topic. Meanwhile, Donald Trump tweeted out a straight out lie about actions from the previous administration.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right.
Concerning the Iran nuclear deal, which is like Obama gave Iran $1.7 billion in cash, and isn't that horrible? It's like, well, that's because that was Iran's money that we sanctioned away from them, and we said, okay, well, we'll give you your money back. Like, we stole it from you, but we'll give it back to you. But you have to let the UN and the international nuclear energy agencies come in and heavily regulate your nuclear power efforts and research efforts, so you don't make a weapon, and we'll give you back your money and we'll not sanction you anymore. And it was effective.
Yeah,
it worked.
Wow,
it worked. Right? So you're going to give us back all our money and give us the nuclear power we want. And all we have to do is say, yeah, no, come in and make sure that we're not making weapons of mass destruction with the uranium we have. Sounds like a great deal to me. Like, that sounds super reasonable. And then this administration went and took a giant crap all over it by sanctioning Iran again. And now and now because of that, because we broke the agreement first, the mainstream media and our conservative government have their panties in a bunch about Iran breaking the agreement, but it's kind of like, no, we did that first.
You know, and that's a good point. And you know, I'm going to kind of veer away from it a little bit, but this reminded me of something I wanted to touch on, which is, in the midst of these stories that drop and get a whole lot of hype, and you know, if you're out there and you're listening and you heard about this and you're like, this seems, is this as stupid as it sounds? Well, we're here to tell you, yes. Yes, it is. But that's to say, like, we have a lot of really intelligent friends who are taking this at face value and saying, like, oh, they look at what they did to try and influence the election. And one, it's just, it goes to show, I think, a lot of people will just have their common sense hijacked by this story. And the reason that's a bad thing, for me, it's not even necessarily about whether or not this whole Russian or Mueller investigation is going to pan out in the way that, you know, the CNN or MSNBC or the liberal pundits want it to. It's that it gets people's eyes off the ball, which is to say, the worst thing about Donald Trump and his administration are the policies that it's doing. And when the media puffs up stories like this, it gets everyone's eye off the ball. You forget about what they're doing to gutting the EPA. You forget about the horrible budget that they just dropped. You forget about the egregious tax bill that went through Congress.
Let's remember, for the Trump voters listening to this show, all two of you, you remember that time when Donald Trump campaigned on the idea that he wouldn't cut Social Security or Medicare? You remember that? You remember that?
Yeah.
I remember that. You want to know what his budget, the proposed White House budget does? Slashes those programs by over 70%.
Yeah. Oh man. And also, well, we're going to be having a guest on the show hopefully in the next few minutes to talk a little bit more about what's going on with food stamp benefits. But one of the things that's really egregious is, I talk about like this box lunch program, and let's actually go to a quick break. I have our guest just called in, so we're going to talk to her a little bit. She's doing some local organizing around basically educating the community about what's going on with food stamp benefits in the era of Drumpf and our labyrinthian state legislation. So thank you all for tuning in. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR, your only source for political revolution.
Attention, wider listeners.
Here at Wider FM, we care about everyone's safety. Please do your part in keeping the roadways safe by staying focused on the road and not driving distractedly. Thank you for listening and driving safely.
Is lack of summer green bringing you down?
Wider Battle of the Bands would like to thank Kelvin & Co. for supporting Radio Evolution. Located at 232 East Michigan Avenue, Kelvin & Co. is an all-natural barbecue joint. To find more information about their food options, you can call 269-350-5236 or visit kelvinandcompany.com.
I like digging holes and hiding things inside them. When I grow old, I hope.
Out of gas, out of time, we walk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are joined now on the program by Miss Gwendolyn Hooker. Hello, Gwen. How are you doing? Sorry, we're having a little bit of a sound. I'm sorry. Could you introduce yourself again? My bad.
For you, Andy. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I invited you on the program here today because y'all are organizing a kind of a teach-in type of event. Is that correct? Is it about food stamp EBT programs?
Absolutely. So what we've been doing for the last couple of months is having what we're calling food stamp pop-ups. And they're information services. So we're just shortening it and saying info services. And we're talking about some of the changes that happened effective January 1st for able-bodied adults without dependents.
Okay. And so when you talk about some of the changes, and, you know, we've been talking a lot on the show recently about the Trump administration, this horrible budget, and we also track a lot of like statewide legislation when it comes to this issue. But when you talk about changes, what kind of changes are we talking about here?
So basically, excuse me, I'm sorry, my asthma's not been cooperating with me so much. But
that's quite all right.
Basically, when we start talking about the changes that are happening, it's real simple. In order to receive food stamps, if you are a person that's able to work, that doesn't have any dependents at home, then you're going to be required to either go back to work, to find a job, a training, or actually volunteer somewhere. If you don't do that, you're only going to be eligible for food stamps for 3 years. Meaning, basically what that boils down to is you're going to be eligible for food stamps for 90 days, and then you won't be eligible again for 3 years.
Man, and speaking as somebody who I grew up in a family receiving food stamps, and I've applied myself. It's already a really difficult kind of bureaucratic process, and with these new changes, it seems like it's going to make it even more difficult. With that in mind, what kind of led to you and your group deciding to organize around this in your community?
Absolutely. So I contacted Phyllis Hop over at the Kalamazoo County Hunger-Free Coalition, and a couple of other folks that are concerned about making sure that people have food security. And we decided to start having these pop-ups. And so the whole purpose is to have organizations come in and explain to residents about some of the changes and how to remain eligible for your food stamps. And so basically that's what we're doing. We're working on our third pop-up, which is actually next, it's next Tuesday, February 27th. It's from noon to 1:30. It's at the Open Doors on Westnedge. And we're just encouraging service providers, community residents, elected officials, anybody that's interested in learning more about the changes that started January 1.
And what is your main concern about how this is going to affect the community, and particularly the kind of Edison and North Side neighborhoods? I know those are both very near dear to my heart, and it's probably a place where something like this could be very disruptive.
Absolutely. And so the problem and the concern, obviously, is that food is a basic need, for people. And without that food security, it's going to cause issues. It's going to put a strain on organizations like Loaves and Fishes, and other places that help people with food, but they're not really prepared for the results and the effects going forward without actually, supplying people with the information and the way to remain eligible. And it's pretty simple. The main thing is that you need to contact your worker. You need to make sure that you're meeting the eligibility requirements so that you are able to continue receiving your food stamps. If it's just a matter of continuing to volunteer somewhere or going to school, whatever it is, you have to contact your worker and you have to get that waiver. It's not a difficult process, but it is a process that you have to go through. Otherwise, you're only going to be eligible, like I said, for 90 days, and then you're going to be cut off for 36 months, which is basically 3 years.
Man, I say, it seems like from a broader political context, it's just more of that trying to kind of blame the poor, that rhetoric that goes all the way back to Reagan, the idea that people are somehow not necessarily deserving of this food. So I was wondering, can you tell people at home who are some of the really vulnerable populations out here that really need this food and are maybe going to have a hard time either finding work or even doing that kind of volunteer requirement?
Well, you know what? That is a great question, and it speaks really to the population that my organization directly serves. And so, helping other people exceed through navigation is an acronym. It's Hope Through Navigation, and it basically serves the population of people with a criminal background and/or substance abuse history, which is why I got involved with this whole process in the first place, because it directly impacts the population that I serve. Most times, people are not working because nobody will hire them. People are not working or volunteering because no one will let them. Almost over 70% of the time. And, and really the stigma behind that, is that, if you have a drug charge or if you have, substance abuse history or a criminal background, the majority of people are not very welcoming. People are pretty judgmental and they don't really want to give you a second chance, which is why people are not working and not volunteering. And so when you start saying things like, if you don't get a job and you don't volunteer, we're going to cut your food stamps, it really is inequitable on its face. It's structurally racist, and it basically segments a very specific population of people, usually low income, marginalized, disenfranchised, already vulnerable populations, and basically puts them between a rock and a hard place and makes them get very, very desperate. When you start talking about food, you start talking about housing, you start talking about insurance, those are the kinds of things that people will do very, very drastic things in order to survive, because those are basic needs. Those are things that you need to live. And so if it's up to, a person to decide, if I have to eat, I'm going to go steal some food, they're going to eat. So you're putting people in positions that are already, in a situation already to be vulnerable, and you're making them even more so because you're actually not giving them a lot of options to do something different. And so we're encouraging folks to, to come out and find out about some of the organizations that actually do believe in second chances. Some of the people in this community that do love the community and love where they live. I am so happy about the support that I have gotten from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, from Loaves and Fishes, from Michigan Works. People have really kind of gathered around this thing and have actually just put all kinds of things in motion to support the work that we're doing. Open doors. I told them I needed somewhere to have another Southside pop-up, because I've been all over town, going from town to town, and I called my friend. I was like, I need a location for the Southside pop-up. And she was like, what day do you, just let me know whatever day you want. You're welcome to come. And those are the kinds of people that nobody talks about, but it's the hidden figures, that really stand up and speak up about some of the things that are happening, in this community. So I'm grateful to be in a position to be doing this work, and I'm happy that, you and people like you have really helped out and encouraged to get the word out about the pop-ups that we've been doing.
Oh, yeah, and, I think this really crucial information for the people in our community to know about. I did want to ask briefly, so DHS, they're the folks that are, administratively having to kind of carry out these policies and help people navigate through the system. How has it been working with kind of the local Department of Human Services, and what are maybe some of the concerns that you've talked to them about with these kind of new restrictions?
Well, so the thing about it, is this kind of came down from the higher up. This is a federal mandate that basically is being forced to be implemented locally. Effective January 1st, there were 13 counties in Michigan that were deemed to do this, to go through this change. And so working with DHS, it's been actually very refreshing, because it's kind of like we're all learning this together. They didn't know anything about this until it happened, and we were equally frustrated with the way that the program was rolled out. There wasn't a lot of information, preemptively to let people know what was going on, which was my frustration. People were receiving letters about this change coming up January 1st, the second week of December. So, if you already don't have a job and you already aren't volunteering for whatever reason, to tell somebody, 21 days, 14 days before January 1st that this is happening is not really fair, in as much as that it doesn't give people time to find a job, and it doesn't give people time enough to really do anything with the information that they're getting. So beginning January 31st, So the clock starts January 1. So January, February, March. By April, if you haven't actually started volunteering somewhere or gotten a job, then April 1, you won't get any food stamps. If you haven't received a waiver or something like that and are not working or doing something to meet the criteria, then beginning in April, the clock will end for you and you will not be eligible to apply for food stamps until you get compliant, which means that if you're not in compliance, then you have to basically wait the 36 months to 3 years before you can reapply for the food stamps.
That is just so egregious. It's disgusting, really.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great word.
Yeah. So kind of speaking about how, this is coming down from the federal government. A lot of people think of resistance kind of in all caps, going out, doing these marches and demonstrations, but this seems like an opportunity if you want to resist what this administration is doing. What are some good ways people can get plugged in, not only to kind of help educate about this, but deal with this specific issue head on, be it maybe how, if they can get involved with volunteering with this particular program, or also for the long haul, how can people help out in the long term to make sure that people in our community have food security?
Absolutely. So, well, the first thing, obviously, is going to be to make sure that you're holding your local elected officials accountable, making sure that they're voting the way that you want them to vote. Everybody that we elect, we are their constituents, and we should be making them and holding them accountable to do what we want them to do. They essentially work for us. And so, I am one of those people that believe in pink slips. It's a word that people don't use very often, but, I just refuse to vote for someone that does not actually do what I want them to do. And it's just like anywhere else. When you hire someone, if they're not doing what you want them to do, you fire them. And so you don't keep electing people that are not doing what you want them to do. So contact your local elected officials, contact your state representatives, your governors, your people that are actually going to Washington and going to Lansing and making decisions for you. The other thing is to, reach out to your local charitable organizations like Loaves and Fishes, the Kalamazoo County Hunger Free Coalition. We're going to need lots and lots of volunteers. We're going to need lots and lots of food being donated. Coming spring, we're going to start having food drives and things like that. But, really take a stand and take an interest, call some people and find out, what can you do? How can you help? Right now, we're going to be really stretched to the bare bones because we're not really prepared for what's going to happen come April.
All right. So April, that's a good time to really get people to mobilize around making sure that everybody has food on their plate. Just out of curiosity, we've got the city government has kind of gotten this recent windfall with the Excellence Foundation. Have you had any conversations with them on this issue? Or if not, what's a good way, do you think, that maybe our local city government could plug in to help deal with this issue?
Well, absolutely. So I speak with Don Cooney a lot. I had the opportunity also to speak with David Anderson. We did a trio interview with Karen Woodward from Public Media Network several weeks ago as we were talking about some basic needs that were happening in our county surrounding housing, surrounding health insurance, and surrounding food. And so, the thing about it is that everybody is kind of caught off guard with this one. We did not see this coming, and we didn't have a lot of time to actually react to it. So everybody is kind of looking at what it is that we need to do and trying to figure out what is the best way to balance out what's going on. Because, as we know, the federal government is going to do whatever we allow it to do. So we have to stand up, we have to speak out, and we have to definitely, enact our rights as citizens and as of people that are able to vote. I believe that most people in the city of Kalamazoo, county of Kalamazoo, are very, this is one of the most philanthropic counties in the country per capita. And so, people that know that there's a need in this community, I believe that they will heed the call. I believe that they will gather around this issue and support a basic need of food for people, not only children and families and seniors, but for able-bodied adults that may be down on their luck, that may need a second chance, like someone just coming home from prison. The likelihood of a person coming home from prison getting a job within 90 days is not that high. It takes time for those kinds of things to happen, and so it really is something that, in my opinion, is a direct assault on an already vulnerable population of people that already need support around housing, already need support around food, and basically it's just another blow hitting someone when they're already down, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I really would like, we've got a few more minutes. I want to touch on that too, because what you brought up with these systemic issues and how this is particularly gonna hurt people who are recently incarcerated. There's a racially tinged bias that goes into that. What do you think people can do in the community to kind of push either both like local employers and or what the kind of sense is with local volunteer agencies to have an awareness of that and to make sure that people who have maybe been unfairly targeted have that opportunity, and how we should make our community aware of how those issues intertwine and what we can do kind of to push back and move forward and help out our communities that are dealing with those issues.
Well, so that's a mouthful.
Yeah, sorry, I wound a little bit. I wound a little bit too much with that question.
There's a question in there anyway, but I'm just gonna answer what I think is close to what you're looking for. And so what I believe is that if there was ever a time to stand up and do the right thing, it's now. We are obviously being assaulted by Trump's administration and the clear systemic and racially divided country that we're living in right now. And so, we care obviously about national government, but, we live in the county of Kalamazoo. And so now is the time to actually stand up and speak out, stand for something or fall for anything. And if we can't agree on, party lines along, different things politically, I think we all should be able to agree that everyone deserves to have food, everyone deserves to have housing, everyone deserves to have insurance. So just on those three things, if we can all agree and actually get to the work at hand and making sure that everybody in this county has those three things, at least, we're going to at least be on the road to, to some form of equity in this county. If we don't figure out a way to stand together, here, then, the generations that come after us are going to be the ones that pay the price.
That is so true. Luke, I was wondering, did you have any questions or anything you wanted to ask about this topic?
Nothing that I can really get into in 3 minutes. So,
okay. Well, in that case, Gwen, just to kind of summarize, could you let the viewers know, when's the when, where, and what? How can they get involved? You've got the pop-up event coming up in the next few days. So just kind of tell the listeners about that and maybe how they can plug in and help y'all out with this important issue.
Absolutely. So the information is the Southside pop-up is February the 27th. It's at noon. It's at Westnedge, 811 South Westnedge at Open Doors. And so we're gonna have information there. Michigan Works, DHS, Kalamazoo Community Foundation, K Strong 5, the Hunger Free Kalamazoo County Coalition, and a host of other folks will be there to talk to people, offer resources for housing, for volunteering, and basically it'll be a group of people in the room to support and share information and let the residents of Kalamazoo, especially the South Side, know that there are people that are standing in their corner and that are willing to give them a second chance and to support them and making sure that they, have that basic need of food.
Okay, great, Gwen. Thank you so much for coming on the program to talk about it. Is there, for people who want to get involved, is there a number or maybe like an email, some way they can get a hold of you or the program?
Absolutely. So the best way, probably the easiest way, is just to look me up on Facebook, Gwendolyn Hooker. You can always find Hope Through Navigation on Facebook. My phone number is 216-8278. If you would like to come help us, we're going to be doing some tagging of the South Side flyers on Sunday and Monday leading up into the event. So contact me if you want to get out and do some outreach. We would love, the Hope Navigation outreach team would love to have you. I know, Andy, you're going to come out and help us on Sunday. So grab some friends, meet us at Fourth Coast, and we'd be glad to buy you a cup of coffee and get to work and hit the streets.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gwen, for coming on the program and talking about it and for your work. I think that's going to be about it for the show. Gwendolyn.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You have a great day. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just say thanks again for tuning into the program. Again, same bat time, same bat channel, every Wednesday, 5 to 7. Any parting words, Luke, for the listeners at home?
Black Panther is amazing. Go see it 3 times.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, well, I don't know if we're not necessarily supposed to call to action, but if you feel
that the movie is as deserving of all of the praise possible, you might possibly want to see it 3 times.
Yes, or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Get and in particular with Black Panther movie. Get all of your friends to see it, especially your white uncle who maybe is not interested in these issues. It's a good primer for a lot of these issues, and it addresses them in a way that's entertaining and fun to people who maybe typically aren't really that interested or don't really know much about issues related to imperialism or black diaspora or etc. So, all right. Well, let's wrap it up. Want to thank y'all and keep on fighting for that revolution solution.